Whew, boy, I just got back from watching Predator Badlands, and y'all, I'm gonna just have to say it. This is the definitive Predator movie. Yes, I'm putting it over Predators, I'm putting it over Prey, I'm putting it over the original Predator movie. Now, why do I think that? Am I glazing the movie? I just got to stick around and find out. Roll the intro.
You're now watching The Captain.
Okay, there's a lot of stuff to talk about when I'm discussing Predator Badlands. First and foremost, I want to talk about the difference in how this is different from most other Predator movies you've probably seen up until this point. When looking at the original Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and even going into the second one with Danny Glover, the Predator was supposed to essentially be this big slasher villain, like a Jason or Michael Myers. It's this big monster that slowly stalks people and murders them and it goes about his day and hunts them essentially. We've seen other movies like Alien versus Predator or even Prey, where we're seeing that there's still a lot of that horror aspect in regards to a predator hunting human beings, but it's starting moving to that territory where we're starting to get some of the lower bound predators and into their like pilgrimage or like their coming of age journey they have to go through in order to be full-fledged Yaojua and be part of their clans. This movie leaning more into the latter of the two, following the journey of a Yaojua who goes by the name of Dek in this film. Dek essentially is a runt of the litter. He is a very small Yaojua in comparison to all the other ones, and he in this movie is going under his hunt to get his cloak. And for people that aren't aware what the cloaks are, they're considering cloaks to be the camouflage device that you see predators use all the time, where they can like essentially turn invisible and camouflage themselves. It's a rite of passage, at least in this specific clan that Dek is a part of. It's part of their tradition to go kill whatever the big prey is that they're hunting and then come back with that head so that they can then earn their cloak and become full-fledged members of their clan. But where things get tricky in this film is that our boy is very small, and because he's small, the Yaojua have this tradition where you're small and you're considered weak, you're cold. The weak are cold out of the clans. They essentially operate in a very similar manner to the Viltrumites in Invincible, where the weakest people are taken out so that only the purest and the strongest of the Yaojua can remain. Obviously, it's some bullshit when you're looking at some of the stuff there. And the movie essentially opens up, and I know I'm jumping into the synopsis, but I want to jump straight into this stuff. The movie opens up into which you're following the main character Dek, and he is like training with his older brother Quay. He's in this cave, essentially hunting him and learning different tricks from him and whatnot. And we find out that his brother Quay loves his brother. And this is something that we don't see too often, if at all, in Predator content, maybe even some of the comic books. We're looking at a situation to where Predators, the Yaojua race, have the ability to have great sympathy and love for one another. This older brother Quay, loves his brother and understands he's a weaker individual, and he's prepping him to undergo his hunt so that he can save his life essentially. Instead of doing what his father asked him to do and kill his brother in his sleep, he says, fuck that, I'm gonna train my brother to be as strong as possible, and I'm gonna send him off to hunt something so that he can earn his place in the clan and not be cold. Obviously, things don't go according to plan, and their father shows up, is pretty angry that his brother has not killed him, tries to force Quay to kill his younger brother, Dek. And as you could expect, Quay is like, no, I'm not going for that. He deserves a hunt. I'm saving my brother and getting up out of here. And in doing so, he loses his life to his father in the process. So this movie essentially is sort of a revenge tale / coming of age story and a part buddy cop, but we'll get into that in a little bit here. There's something I want to kind of stop and bring to light in regards to this plot up until this point. It's shown that Dek has this rage inside of him because he is undersized and underestimated. He kind of has like a little bit of Napoleon syndrome, but he fights with rage. There's like literally a comment or back and forth that he has with his brother Quay while they're training, where he says Quay fights like his father and Dek fights with rage. So he's just always fighting with this sense of rage and wanting to fight with desperation to prove himself. When he's sent off to this planet, we find out earlier through like conversation that Dek has with his brother that the planet that he's going to go hunt on is one called, I think Genna, I believe is the name of the planet, and it's called the Death Planet. So the Yaojua fear this planet. And for people that aren't too familiar with the Yaojua lore, they are people who hunt the biggest possible, strongest things there is in the galaxy. Like, to put this into perspective, they hunt the xenomorphs. Like, they showed in past movies and some of the comics to where they will take xenomorph eggs and put them in hunting places so they can hunt them because they are very much so dangerous. So they just got to go after the biggest, possible things that are dangerous. So if you have a planet that the Yaojua people are calling the Death Planet, it puts into perspective how fucked up this planet is. And on this planet, there is a thing called the Kalisk that all Yaojua fear, especially their father, who is supposed to be this big alpha Yaojua and the leader of their clan. He fears the Kalisk. So that being the case, Dek says, if my father fears it and it's the most dangerous thing to hunt, I need to hunt this thing to prove myself. That's where the Napoleon syndrome kind of kicks in there. So he sets into course the idea of going to hunt this Kalisk on Genna. With his brother dead and his father attempting to kill him, and now he's off, jettisoned into the galaxy in the ship, he crash lands on Genna and thus begins his journey to hunt down the Kalisk. Now, in hunting down the Kalisk, he encounters a robot by the name of Thea. Thea is like a Weyland-Yutani synthoid that was sent to that planet to also hunt the Kalisk. And they're seeking the Kalisk because it has a lot of regenerative properties. Like, we see through fighting later on that the Kalisk literally is like this humanoid type of creature, but it legit has like Wolverine like levels of regenerative ability. Like, hell, even more so, because literally we see a point in a fight to where Dek cuts off this thing's head and it regenerates its head to its body. So it's damn near unfucking killable. It's crazy. It'll probably, honestly, I'd be curious to like analyze this and see a fight between a Kalisk and an actual xenomorph to see which is stronger, because low key, I may put this thing over a xenomorph. Like, xenomorphs are dangerous and have a lot of dangerous abilities within their skill set, but the Kalisk, the way it regenerates, I don't think there's too many options for a xenomorph to take down a Kalisk, especially when you're looking at a full-grown Kalisk. It's pretty fucking big. It's like damn near the size of a xenomorph queen, damn near. So you have this thing that's bigger than xenomorphs, is a little bit more durable than xenomorphs are. That's kind of, it's insane. It's insane to think about. But I want to kind of sit back. I want to take a step back from this, the overall plot synopsis, and kind of break down some of the themes that you see in this film. So I know earlier I mentioned the aspect of rage being really integral to Dek's character and also this revenge story that he's going on. There is another game slash story that this movie reminds me of, and I would not be surprised if the director and the writer had a lot of inspiration from this. And I have it in the thumbnail, so you probably clicked on this video expecting this comparison. But this movie really reminds me a lot of the God of War games. This entire movie is trying to teach this main character the idea of hunting in a pack and not being alone, and showing the strength that you have in family, essentially, and leaning on other people. But it's stupid to hunt by yourself. We see in the way that the God of War games work, at least in the more recent ones, where you have somebody in Kratos who is not as rage-filled as the original Ghost of Sparta arc that he went through, but he's still pretty angry and still pretty cold and does not want to rely on too many other people. But throughout the game, as you're exploring this world with Atreus and, oh my god, I'm blanking on the floating head's name, Mimir. As you're traveling through the world with Mimir and Atreus, you see Kratos become more warm and more open to the idea of having this little family that he cultivates. And it's very similar to how this movie works. It's so eerily similar to the point to where when you're seeing Thea in the film, you see Mimir obviously being attached to Kratos at the literal hip, and in this movie you're seeing Thea being strapped to Dek's back the entire film, and they're having dialogue and they're talking back and forth and warming up to one another. And you even have a little point in the film to where Thea is describing the concept of a wolf and a wolf pack to Dek, letting him know that wolves are an apex predator on Earth, and their strength comes from the fact that they hunt in numbers, and that the alpha within the pack is not the alpha and the leader because he is the strongest and gets the most kills, but because he's the most proficient at protecting the rest of the pack. And that really like plants seeds throughout this entire story for Dek's journey, to where he's embracing the idea of not just being consumed by revenge and following the Yaojua code to a T, but he's developing the ideology of hunting in a pack and developing his own clan. And it's something that I find really interesting, because when you look at the opening credits of the movie, you get a flash of a kind of a code or a law or a like religious text from the Yaojua, where it pretty much essentially tells you that the Yaojua are prey to none and predators to all, they're friends to none. So this movie is legit Dek kind of breaking that ideology and showing that he's stronger when he's together and he grows throughout the film. The next thing that I love about this movie is that it pretty much takes away a lot of the fancy gadgets that you see in a Predator film. Like, for the most part, we're all pretty familiar with the weapons that predators have, from the nets that they have that pretty much cut through flesh pretty easily, to the spears, to the plasma casters. We're familiar with all that stuff. And a lot of those weapons are still introduced in this movie, and some new weapons that we haven't seen before. Like there's a shuriken that's like it's like a wrist shuriken that kind of deploys out of the wrist that he can throw. But what this movie does is it takes all that stuff away. In the beginning of the movie, it pretty much sets up the idea that he's going to use all these weapons, but all these weapons get taken away from him, and he has to learn through his experience of being on this planet the different weapons that he can utilize. It's very similar to like the Predators movie, to where you're taking this character who's put in this unique environment, and throughout the course of the movie, he's learning different things about the environment, like the flora and the fauna and what's dangerous and things of that nature. And by the end of the movie, he learns how to take those things and make them a part of his kit. So like his journey has been building him up to be the strongest version of the Predator that he is, the Yowza that he is. And it's amazing because you have all this stuff built up, and then when you get to the final confrontation, which essentially is Dek fighting an entire army camp of synthoids, of synthetics, in order to save Thea, because I'll get into why he has to save her in a second here. But you essentially see him get all the different insects and animals and different things around this world and build a new Predator armor out of that stuff through natural means. And he's hunting down these synthetics. So it makes him feel a lot more badass because he earned everything he got. And it makes him feel like he earned the right to be a Yaozo because he grew and developed all those things, versus just taking the aspects of his culture and that it made things really easy for him and going about that. It honestly makes me question the Yaozo people and like the way they go about doing things, because it seems like most of the Yaozo have their own specific weapons that their clan develops. Like in this one, it seems like plasma weapons were something that was really emphasized. Like the swords in this movie are a sword that I've never seen before. It's like it's legit like a plasma sword, like almost like a lightsaber in a sense, but it folds out to be like a blade. So imagine like a regular sword, but it has lightsaber energy like on the blade hilt, on the blade part of it, so it cuts through things very cleanly. So I'm looking at things like that and all the advanced weaponry that these Predators have and how they go to hunt things, it makes me feel like, you know, they kind of soft. It makes me think you're kind of soft, because if you're a Predator and you're going in with all this advanced weaponry, how do you feel like you've earned the kill in that point? It kind of reminds me like in real life where you see hunters go out with like crazy souped up rifles, or I've seen some people go out with like automatic weapons and like they'll kill a deer and they'll riddle the deer or the boar or whatever the hunting thing or whatever they're hunting. They'll riddle it with bullets, and it's like, yeah, you got the kill, but like how good of a hunter were you? You're not like a Native American who was using a fucking bow and arrow or a blade to stab a buffalo or shoot a buffalo in the head in the wild. You're not being, there's no ingenuity in that. It's not showing any grit or like you progressing as a person. So that's why I think going with this approach makes Dek seem a lot more capable and a lot more stronger than the traditional Yaozo, because he's got it out the mud essentially. Now, again, the whole plot of this movie revolves around the Calisk and the pursuit of the Calisk, because Dek wants the Calisk to prove himself and for it to be the trophy that he brings back to his clan to earn his cloak. And then the Weyland-Yutani synthoids that are on this planet are seeking out the Calisk in order to utilize it for its regenerative properties, so they can essentially like use it to help, you know, go towards medical advancements in the human race. So you're having that dichotomy there, that opposing goals in regards to what's going on there. What this movie also does an amazing job of doing is taking you on this journey and having you go through this thing, but it also sets up future endeavors and possible future movies / shows. One thing that I found very amazing about this entire universe up until this point, when you're looking at Alien Romulus, when you're looking at Prey, and you're looking at the new Alien Earth movie, is that they are telling these stories but also leaving room for improvement. And although I think the Alien movies have a big issue with like the time of when things take place and like the sequence of events there, I think with this movie in particular, there's a unique opening to develop the Predator and the Yaozo world more, and the galaxy in general more, because you are keeping things centralized in this one place and using Dek as a lens and a vehicle and a medium to go through this entire, you know, this entire culture. Because if you don't read a lot of the comics, Yaozo people aren't like uniform. It's not just like one Yaozo coding, one Yaozo way of going about things. There are multiple different clans and factions of the Yaozo that do things in their own specific ways in regards to the technology they have, the way they hunt. There's a lot of overlap between like the way their armor works and the codes that they have and things of that nature. But for the most part, every time you see a Predator movie, you're gonna notice that like each armor that they wear, the weapons that they have, look a little bit different, or sometimes drastically different. Like even if you look at the plasma caster in this movie versus the plasma caster in previous films, it's gonna look very different. Even if you played the Predator video game where you're hunting people, you can customize your Predator to look and differently and have different types of weapons and things of that nature. So there's the traditional weapons you're used to seeing, but some new stuff that's, you know, has a little sauce that's unique to this clan that Dek that he hails from. But Whole movie goes by and you pretty much find out that the Callus is, again, being hunted by both sides. And we find out in this movie that there's a baby Callus that they encounter that they don't know is a Callus initially, but he essentially marks Deck. Like, he spits on him and marks him as being a part of his family. And over the course of the film, we're seeing that this, I can't remember what they called it. They gave him like a little cute pet name, but we find out that this baby Callus is warming up to Deck and Deck's warming up to him. And by the end of the film, instead of hunting his mother, when we find out that this the big Callus that we're used to seeing as a mother, instead of hunting that, he decides, hey, this thing is trying to protect its family like my brother tried to protect me, so I'm going to rescue the mother Callus and, you know, make sure that little homie has his mother around. So with that whole aspect of the Callus being there, we also dive into the aspects of the Synthoids. There are a lot of traditional Synthoids that we're used to seeing, like with the Weyland-Yutani thing that's going on, where they're just traditional like cyborgs essentially. But there are two Synthoids in this film that are very different and very unique, and that is Thea, the character that I've mentioned up until this point that we see throughout the film because she's like cut in half, and Tessa, who is essentially like her twin sister. They're two Synthoids that are more so similar to the rest of the Synthoids, but they're supposed to be more advanced from the aspect that they can feel emotions a lot more vividly and intensely. And the purpose for that is so that they can have compassion and understand the emotions of the wildlife on this planet, so they can abuse and use them more effectively, so they can kind of emote emotions. Because you understand as a human being that even though like think back to like how you have cats or dogs, any animal, you can usually tell how these animals are feeling based off of the emotions they emote. So if you have something that is very cold and very robotic, it's going to be hard for this robot to understand what's going on with these animals unless it's like looking at things from a very logical standpoint. So you have two Synthoids who are very much so in touch with their emotions, which honestly makes me question how much of a Synthoid they are at that point, because yes, although they're synthetic in nature, if you literally have a robot with emotions that's meant to feel intense emotions, it's kind of interesting. Because by the end of the movie, Thea ends up being very, you know, friendly with Deck and end up forming their own clan essentially with those two and then the baby Callus. Because throughout the course of the film, again, if we find out why the Synthoids are there, why Weyland-Yutani is there, and their whole aspect of wanting to capture the adult Callus, the mother Callus, and it's a whole thing. And we end up having it to where Tessa is looking at her sister or whatever she is as defective, and she boxes her up. So the whole climax of the film and the ending of the film, Deck going to rescue Thea and killing all the Synthoids in his camp, as well as freeing the Callus mother, and that ends up being a thing to where they free the Callus mother ends up eating Tessa and ends up dying. So it ends up being like they end up dying. Big Mother dies, Tessa dies. That's pretty much the plot of the film. The film is very straightforward in regards to the plot synopsis of it. You have this coming of age story. It ends with him forming his own clan, and then he goes back to his home planet to take his revenge and to get his cloak, where we find out that he's not just like dead set on finishing the tradition out naturally how you would expect, but he kills his father, gets his cloak, and then says, I have my own clan now. I'm not just here to take over this clan. But the really interesting thing we see at the end of the movie is that there is like a group of other Yaozu that are approaching this camp that are a threat, and we find out through Deck at the end of the film that that is his mother coming. So this movie pretty much opens up the possibility for a sequel, and I'm really excited to see what a sequel for this will look like. And I've even heard the director in an interview talk about the possibility of there being an Alien versus Predator movie again, and that being a thing that happens again. And honestly, with the way that they have been writing and directing things like Alien and Romulus, and the way that this director did Prey in this film, I'm excited to see what these people can do with another Alien versus Predator movie. Because obviously the original Alien versus Predator movies were pretty ass. It was cool to see the big fights, but they were pretty ass in regards to any other aspect of the writing and things of that nature. I honestly find it a lot more entertaining and a lot more better of a story when the Yaozu and the Xenomorphs can do their thing and human beings are removed from the equation. Because whenever humans are involved, you have all this complex side plot stuff with human beings going on, and I think it just takes away from what the Xenomorphs and the Yaozu are, especially when you're looking at how in-depth the cultures for both of them are. Because for people that don't know, the Xenomorphs have like this almost supernatural aspect to them, to where there's this xenomorph queen who is telepathically connected to all of them, and she's essentially like a god, or like a xenomorph god. And you see about her and hear about her through Alien comic books that you have going on there, but there's a lot of lore that's stuffed into the Xenomorphs and the Yaozu. So more movies about just them and their culture and what they are will be far more interesting than involving human beings and all that extra greedy stuff with the Weyland-Yutani stuff that goes on. I'm kind of over that aspect of it. It's kind of similar to like how I feel about in Star Wars, where I don't really want to see too much shit about bounty hunters anymore. If it's not about Jedi and Sith or the Mandalorians themselves, there's not too many other aspects of the Star Wars universe that really grabs my attention per se, personally. But this movie is great. From the way the CGI for this is amazing. I can never tell sometimes where the CGI ends and the prosthetic special effects makeup begins. So the next thing I want to bring up that I think is very important to discuss is the budget for this film, because like I mentioned, all these great things, you would think that all these things being incorporated in this film, that this movie would be like a $200 million movie. Like you would think that this movie would be like on par with something like the Avatar stuff because of how great it looks. But this movie was made with only like $105 million. And that really just like blows my mind, because when I'm looking at some of the best movies this year, when you look at a movie like a Sinners, right? A movie that was amazingly well received and looked great and had all these great practical and special effects in the film, that movie was only made with $90 million. Now, these are just the production budgets. Obviously, there's like another like 70 or 60 million that goes into the actual marketing for the film. But for two amazing films that have come out this year to be made with only $90 to $100 million, and for people that don't know, that's really fucking cheap for a big budget cinematic film. That's extremely cheap. So for the fact that these movies are as good as they are, as cheap of a budget that they had, it's going to be very interesting to see how the movie industry kind of does things going forward, because we've seen a lot of movies in the last couple of years that have ridiculously big budgets that just flop because they're not that good. Let's start there. Like, the movies that are being made with these massive budgets aren't good enough, in my opinion, to warrant the amount of money that you expect in return for an ROI. These movies, though, the fact that you're making movies that look this good on shoestring budgets, I'm imagining that this Predator movie, I'm probably just predicting that it's going to make a lot of money in the box office. I'm expecting this movie to turn a pretty big profit, just for the factor of it's going to be hyped. You're going to get a lot of butts and seats because it's a franchise that has a lot of nostalgia, and then because it's already good, word of mouth is going to spread about this movie. So I expect this movie maybe not to make as much as Sinners, but to definitely make a good bit of chunk for its change, and for the progress for this franchise when it comes to the Predator stuff, and even when you're looking at the Alien stuff. I expect these movies to continue making a lot more money going forward, because it seems like these movies are made on relatively cheap budgets but are amazing quality. If I had to rate this movie, I'd probably give it like 9 yowzers out of 10. It's damn near a perfect, straightforward movie in my opinion. It's not doing anything crazy innovative, but it's also taking that extra step to do some things that we haven't seen before from the Predator movies up to this point. For the most part, there's not too many amazing Predator movies. You have Prey, that I think was the best Predator movie up until now with this movie, and then you have like the Predators movie with Adrian Brody, and then you have like the OG Predator movie, and even the second one with Danny Glover, that were okay. But for the most part, when you're looking at Alien versus Predator and all the other extra Predator movies that were made, like the fucking one with Keegan-Michael Key, they've been pretty bad. They've been pretty buns. I can't lie, they've been pretty buns. So it's amazing to me that we got a dope movie in this universe, and from the way that this movie was made and the way that they left off the ending for there to be potential for a sequel, I'm excited to see where this goes. But this has been Captain Diesel of Captain Diesel's Dojo. If you guys were tempted to go see this movie before now and you saw this video and it convinced you to go see it, let me know. If you guys have seen it and thought great things about it or maybe negative things about it, let me know in the comment section below as well. But most importantly, there are 3 things that I need to point out to you guys if you made it this far in the video, because if you made it this far, it means you somewhat enjoyed what I've had to say. So that means I would love to ask you guys to like this video. Secondly, I'd ask that you guys, utilize a new function that YouTube has going on where you can hype videos. If you go to the comment aspect of it on mobile and slide over, it'll allow you to hype a video. And there's free points you essentially get every week to where you can hype a video and that video moves to the top of the leaderboard on like the ranking that YouTube has. And it helps to really give smaller creators a shine and give them a bigger audience on the platform. So I would appreciate greatly you guys doing that. And lastly, subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed, if you want to keep track of more videos that I put out in regards to maybe the reviews that I do like this, or any of the video essays that I have on big concepts, or just follow any of the general content I put out, like interviews and different things of that nature from big comic book writers and creators and things of that nature. But again, this has been Captain Diesel of Captain Diesel's Dojo. I know I maybe rambled a lot through this video, but it is literally like 1 o'clock in the morning. I went to a 10 o'clock showing for this movie so I could see it as early as possible. So I'm a little tired, it's a little late, a little delirious. So you guys remember forever and always,
You're now watching the Captain.
and I will see you guys next time. Be good people.